So I want to welcome everyone to today's Small Scale Big Impact event. This is the fourth in a series of a collaboration between Inspiring Australia and the ACT branch of the Australian Science Communicators. In the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia where we all may be present. I know that there's a few national attendees here, and we pay our respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So today's session is about the online tools that are available to make organising, managing or running an event easier. There are a lot of platforms and software available online to make your event much smoother and look more professional, but who knows what's good and what's not. Well, hopefully our two panelists today are going to give us a bit of help with that. So Chanel Egan is the Chief of Staff at Pint of Science Australia, and Jin-oh Choi is the Director of ICT at Pint of Science Australia. They also have a wealth of experience both with their ICT and volunteering experience, and they've come here to share a little of what they've learned. So today they'll take you through some of the platform tools that are freely available to help. We all like free tools here. To help with team collaboration, organisation and managing your workflows. Please remember you can add your questions to the Q&A section. You can find the box at the bottom of the screen and you can add them throughout the session, and we will either get to them if they're pretty important, but please make sure that if it's for specifically one of our panelists that you note that, but if it's for both of them, just let us know and we can get to them. We'll get to as many as we can. So I am going to throw now to Jin-oh and Chanel to take us away and lead us on the journey.
Thank you, Camille. I guess I'll get the ball rolling on our presentation. If I can get the slides to move. Okay, the things, so what we wanted to do is answer some questions around what are the best platforms for collaborations. So we thought we'd get the discussion going by answering just a few of the key questions that we thought were important, and that is about how to manage your organisation's assets in terms of all your documents, all your correspondence, how you actually manage that information. We also will look at on how to manage the communication not only within the organisation, but also how you make sure you've got a paper trail of all your outgoing and incoming information as well. We also we'll touch on how to manage tasks and work packages by giving you some solutions along the way.
So in focusing on those three main things that you might be considering in terms of what platforms you might be looking for, we'll be kind of focusing on the elements of how easy to use they are, or how familiar people already are with that application or a similar application, the benefits of separating your volunteering roles from your education accounts, work accounts, or other personal accounts. So keeping everything in their little box where they belong. Longevity, so looking at how to continue with your organisation and with the documents and any other pieces of information that you have, even if staff change throughout time. So it's not living just with somebody's desktop on their computer or in their mailbox. And then also cost effectiveness. So everything that we're looking at today is either free or has a free version or has not-for-profit licensing available to you. So none of these are expensive corporate applications. They're all things that we've used ourselves in various roles that we have.
So I guess the first platform I wanted to introduce to everyone is G Suite. So You may be familiar with Google Docs, Gmail, and applications like that. So for an organisation such as Pint of Science, we wanted to give everyone access to all the software that they needed to work. So with the G Suite's non-profit offering, which is free for a lot of their software packages, what we tried to do is make sure that we could use one main platform and then build based on that on what are the needs of the organisation. So it's a good thing about using G Suite. A lot of people are familiar with the platform because they've used Gmail before, they've used the Google Docs or something similar, whether that be Office. What Google tries to do and what we try to do is trying to make sure that the platforms that we use are really easy and accessible to everyone. So for us, the main applications that we use from G Suite are their mail app, their documents app, their sheets, which is Excel to do various things from accounting, data entry, various things like that. We also use slides for presentation. The key component we use G Suite is for single sign-on. So what that allows is for someone to use their unique credentials for Pint of Science across all the platforms that we use. So we don't have people having to remember a credential for one application and then another because they're using the same credentials across the board. Key factors with G Suite that we use quite a bit are the central storage, what they call it Google Drive, which allows for you to have a central location for all your documents. So rather than being scattered across everyone's own computer, you've got a central location. And the importance about that is that it's all stored in one area, and for future events, you can then know that you've got that data saved somewhere rather than it being saved on someone's machine that you may have lost contact with, or they may have left the organisation for some other reason, or there may be some inactivity there. So just to be able to have that central location is always good for the longevity of the organisation. You are also able to manage those permissions as well, so you can grant access to various teams. For example, of the screenshot there shows the breakdown of just some of the drive structure. So you may have a shared drive for the ICT team or the comms team, etc. So you can keep that information private, but also available to the public as needed. We also use the centralized calendars quite a bit, just to make sure that everyone's able to show their availability, even especially with the volunteer organisation. We're not here 9 to 5. We have odd hours that we work, so just to be able to show that availability to make the coordination of meetings a lot easier. So G Suite also does have Google Meet, which is their version of their video conferencing software, which it's like Zoom. It's all those sort of packages are also sort of fairly similar, I guess, with Google Meet. When you use their non-profit option, there's no 40-minute limit on that. So that may also be useful for other purpose as well, but it's just useful to know. Finally, the main aspect is, as with any organisation, you want to be able to look professional to not only your own staff and volunteers, but also to those you interact with. So the fact that we do have an email address, which is, so in our case, it's at pintofscience.com.au. So it's not coming from someone's personal email address or their educational email address, etc. So it allows you to give that separation from their personal work, education, etc. But also allows you to have a paper trail and an archive of all correspondence going in and out, which is especially important for an organisation such as Pint of Science, which has volunteers who may come and go from the organisation. So the fact that we do have that we think about that continued longevity, so we know that that there is that history there. As part of G Suite's offering, they do also have the delegated email access. So, for example, you may have an ICT mailbox that you want all members of your ICT team to have access to, or your comms team, etc. So it does have those benefits there. So this was really just a brief introduction to G Suite, which is a good platform to have, and it's also good from a perspective of being a good backbone from the organisation, where you can actually build on top of. And with any great platform, they have mobile apps for both iOS and Android, and also available on the desktop on Mac and PCs. So I'll move on to, I'll let Chanel take over.
So for our general communications, even though, as Jin-oh mentioned, we do have our own dedicated email addresses at Pint of Science, we do have most of our conversations outside of email in an application called Slack. So Slack, you may have heard of previously. So it's a chat app, I guess, is a way to name it. But you invite people into your workspace, and you can give people access to certain channels. So you might have channels for different subcommittees or different projects, or however you might be kind of working with a reduced set of people, or if you wanted to streamline communications on a particular topic. So as you can see from my little diagram, a little screenshot here, on the far left, there's two icons. So those icons represent two different organizations that I use Slack for. So you can toggle between any number of different organizations that you're working with. So here's a snap from our Pint of Science one. So we've got a pets channel, which we've kept separate from the work channels, so that we give people a bit of space to get to know each other on a personal front, and keep that separated from the work channels. So you can see with the hashtag in front of it, that means it's public. So anybody that you invite into your workspace can see that. Whereas the ones here with the padlocks down the side, those ones are only by invitation. So you can make sure that, certain conversations are not public across any other people in the organization if you need. You can also send direct messages to one specific person outside the channels that you have set up. So yeah, you can see here we have a lot of channels for various different things, and you can see down the bottom as well, if somebody posts something, you can respond with an emoji. So you don't necessarily have to say, thanks, I've seen that. You might just put a thumbs up to say, yes, I've seen your message, I've acknowledged it, and I'm on it now, which is a quick way to respond across a team. Slack has notifications, so similar to any other messaging app you have on your phone or computer. You can get notifications, and you can set those up to be specific to how you want to be notified, whether it's for everything, certain channels, if someone like tags you so that you know that you're specifically needed. And you can set up times of the day that you're happy to be notified as well. So my notifications are set to alert me between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then outside those hours, my sleep won't get interrupted by my notifications. If someone's working late into the evening, I don't want to be interrupted. You can also set your status to say whether you're at work or on leave or sick, so that somebody can easily see if it's not a great time to contact you. So yeah, lots of stuff in notifications that you can work on. And it has integration with Google Docs and Google Calendar as well. So one thing that's really great with G Suite is the integration with other platforms that Google doesn't own. They're pretty friendly with who can tap into their products. So with Slack, we can have certain channels that are set up to give you a notification if an email is received to a certain inbox. So how Jin-oh mentioned that you've got delegated access for a shared account. So if you have the, the ICT team have access to a big mailbox, they might not want to check it all the time because I think people get overwhelmed with having a lot of mailboxes to check. But you can have that pointing to one of your Slack channels to alert you as soon as an email comes in. And then you can click on that email and it will take you directly out to that email to have a look at it. So it's really easy and user-friendly in that space. And you can also integrate your calendar. So I get a Slack notification 10 minutes before I have a meeting that's in my connected calendar, which is really handy because when that pops up, I can click on it and it will take me straight to that meeting. So I don't have to navigate through lots of different applications to get somewhere. And like G Suite, it has its own mobile app, an app for PC and Mac, and also a website that you can just navigate to. So the screenshot here is from my Mac, which is my home computer, but it looks exactly the same on my PC at work. The mobile app is a little bit, formatted a little bit differently, but largely the same kind of navigation experience. So it's pretty easy to jump between different devices.
So the next platform that I'll mention is Notion. We've only just started using Notion in the last 6 months. I guess the one thing to mention is that there is always going to be overlap between a lot of the tools that we use. One of the things is to find the best tool which is easiest to use for everyone involved, but it may also be that some teams don't use all the tools. It may just be specific to one or more teams. So in this case, what we use Notion for is a lot about note taking. So making sure that we have information from weekly meetings, etc. We also use the Kanban boards for task allocation, so we can see how far a task has gone through within a project. We also use this app for reminders. So as part of the notes taking that we use for meetings, etc., you were able to notify users by using the @ symbol and their name, etc., and that'll then tag them either when they need it, or you may tag it with the time associated. So the whole idea of using this particular app Notion is it is really a blank canvas in terms of what it can do. We are looking at expanding this for more database functionality around a new CRM. So in terms of Pint of Science, what that will allow us to keep historical data of all our speakers, all our venues, etc. At the moment, that information is scattered across the different spreadsheets at the moment. And on the website, so what we're trying to do is consolidate that into one area to make sure it's not only central, but it's also there for archival purposes, and allows us to move forward and have that information available. One other aspect that we are also going to use this platform is for wikis. Again, that is for the longevity of information. So you want to be able to have information available for volunteers and other people that are involved in our case. It could be for speakers. We want to have information available, tips on how to give a presentation, etc. So for us, we'll be using in the long term to create those wikis or the documents there that we can then share not only internally and externally. And as with all of the other apps, they do have mobile and the desktop apps available, both Apple and Android, etc. So what we try to emphasize is all of our apps are available across all platforms for ease of use. I'll pass it on to Chanel to talk about Airtable.
So something else that we use to manage tasks is Airtable. So the easiest way to think about it is as spreadsheets, but better. So you can certainly use it as a nice kind of, fancy spreadsheet. But what it does behind the scenes is really powerful in how it kind of arranges that data in nicer ways for you. So I'll just start with kind of how you would use it. So it arranges little kind of base, they call them bases. So in the little screenshot below, you can see little squares with different colors and different icons. So each of those can be shared separately, or you can see they sit under a heading, like a group of those, and you can share those as well. So again, it gives you the ability to share, but also restrict access with different people, depending on who you need to know certain things. And each of those little square icons that are there do different things. So this example that we've got below has like one listing events, and then one is an org chart. So very different types of representations of data, but by putting everything in a spreadsheet format, it kind of manipulates them and shows you things in a nicer way. So I've got some more screenshots on the next slide. If Jin-oh clicks the button. Thanks. Okay, so on the left here, we have like a Kanban style layout. So similar to what Notion does, but you can move them between awaiting approval, in progress, and done. So you can also see that they've got some details about the task and a point person here as well. So you can quickly change from the view being the status. You can actually rearrange the tiles to be viewed by person to see which tasks are assigned to you or assigned to somebody else. And then the budget here is also listed, so you can reshuffle according to budgets as well. So this great little tile layout, but you can keep juggling to see them how you need to look at that information. Because it does have a spreadsheet as its kind of backbone, you can use nice graphs as well. So like you do in Excel, you can get some nice graphs, although these look a lot more modern and not stuck in the 80s like Excel still seems to be. So you're a bit more user-friendly with the way that you arrange the data and the naming and the colors and stuff like that. And then finally, we've got more of the database set up in the screenshot at the bottom, where you look at somebody's name and then their role, and you've got a little photo for them, their region, and in skills, you can see there's multiple skills that a person can have. So as soon as we're saying one person has many attributes, That's where we're getting into that database territory, and where it can be really powerful to manipulate data. So you can kind of click on where it says visual design, and that can take you to a whole different table of information. So that might show you all the people with that skill set, or that could take you to a place where it looks at outlining dot points of competencies for that skill set, to kind of drill into detail and a bit more information. So if Jin-oh can just take us back to the previous slide. I'll just go back through some more details on Airtable. So it is free, but some elements are paid. But when you share bases with other people, you get credit. So depending on how you're using it and how you're sharing it, it can be really cost effective if you can get a good amount of credit through them. So I've shown you how you can use it as a database, a Kanban, and graphs. I haven't shown you how you can use it as a project schedule or a Gantt chart. But again, that's pretty powerful, where you set up your tasks, like in a table, and then list the people working on it, the dates and everything, and then it can present it in that nice little chart of dependencies for you to visualize a timeline of events. Again, like everything else that we've spoken about, Airtable has a website and also apps that you can use. It's very user-friendly, and their support material is really great. So you can really kind of build on your knowledge from a really basic standpoint and go through their online learning and help articles to kind of understand how to do more and more with it.
Well, thanks, Chanel. I guess we wanted to give you a view of all the main applications and platforms that we use. There are some other tools that we also use as well. One was Trello, which was also a task management software. We actually moved away from that, mainly because of cost. They changed their pricing structure, so it wasn't as cost effective for us. Microsoft 365 is what many of you may be familiar with in your office environments. They do have a non-profit offering as well. So same along the lines that G Suite, there's no real preference for one or the other. You really just need to choose which one's more suitable for you, unless you have someone who does have the IT background to do that setup and management for you. Another tool that we use is MailChimp, which is to send our EDM. So these are our electronic direct mailing mail out to all our volunteers, presenters, etc., which is a useful way to reach out and get information from these various aspects. I think I did have another slide here that I wanted to put in, but I didn't actually put that in. So I guess we just want to, again, this was only a brief overview of some of the platforms. Feel free to reach out to either Chanel or myself. Our contact details are there, so either through email or LinkedIn. And I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Yes, that was great. I have to, full disclosure, I've worked with Pint of Science as well, and had seen all of the stuff in operation, and seen Chanel and Jin-oh in operation, which is great to watch. We have had one question about the number of platforms. Obviously, you guys have worked through a lot of platforms today with us. And Jenny Class was wondering how you keep track of what goes in which platform, and managing that with all of the participants that you have, so whether that's volunteers or speakers. So possibly this might be Chanel's bag in terms of how do we keep track of what goes where and letting people know.
Yes, so it is really a bit of trial and error in terms of what gets more engagement. But Slack, we've been using Slack for a few years, and our engagement with it has been increasing. So I think as people become more familiar with different tools, they'll use them more and they see the benefits. So don't give up if you have trouble like when you first use it to get people to buy into it. I think once they experience the benefits, they'll be happy to use it. So I guess G Suite, that just replicates your kind of way of working with documents and email and stuff like that. So that's kind of a pretty standard thing to have. And Slack, again, I think because that can be on your phone and your computers, people do kind of gradually use that. I think one thing that helps us with that is the integration that G Suite has to the other tools. So you get alerts in both places, and they talk to each other, which makes it feel a bit more holistic and less than a piecemeal of things that do kind of certain things. I think Jin-oh could probably talk a little bit more about that integration piece. And he can also check in the back end, like you get a lot of admin access to see who's logging in and who's doing what. So it gives you visibility on who's engaging and who's not.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I just want to add to that is you don't have to use every platform. So these are just very different platforms, and some teams may not need to use all of these platforms. So if you're a smaller team, for example, your main concern might be communication. So in that case, I may suggest using Slack, for example, which allows you to be able to communicate more within the team, as opposed to using other applications such as WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, etc. In a lot of cases, it's about keeping your personal life and work life separate from your volunteer or event work. So you want to keep that separate. And also some people may not be comfortable sharing their mobile number or sharing their Facebook profile with someone that they may not know. So it does give them that separation. So there's always going to be a platform to do certain things. There's not necessarily going to be one platform that does everything, but there are some key ones that we've used. So for example, if we were to break it down to maybe one or two platforms, it may be to use G Suite mainly for your central storage of your data, making sure that that's kept longevity wise, and maybe Slack for that quick communication that you want. So people aren't using WhatsApp or a platform like that where they may have to overshare some information, such as a phone number.
So has it been difficult to encourage people to use the Pint of Science tools rather than their personal accounts?
I think it's been good to the fact that we issue everyone with a Pint of Science email account. So we want to encourage them to be part of the brand of what is Pint of Science. If you don't give someone that opportunity to use those tools, they'll move away. They'll use their personal email address or their phone for things like that. So what we try to do is to give them that opportunity, and it does sort of give them some pride in the project or the event. Right, that was my phone going off.
And I think that's important, particularly in smaller organisations, to have that branding from everybody who's speaking from the same sheet, I guess.
Yeah, I think also like you don't know what organization people work at or what kind of dodgy email addresses they might have set up for themselves privately. So it does kind of just stop any, I guess, misunderstanding of who's approaching them and for what reason, if you are reaching out to people to ask them to engage in your events. So having that kind of professional domain is very important from that perspective.
So I guess each of you, what would be your, for a first time running an event, what would be your starter kit recommendation? What would you want people to think should set up first?
I would recommend Slack, just because like so many things can kind of feed into it. It's a great starting point to get familiar with. So I think Slack's amazing. And then also, even if it's not G Suite, right, like just yet, you don't have to kind of go into that full gamut of G Suite. Just somewhere where you can share documents, like any kind of cloud platform where you're storing your documents and data in one spot is a great start.
Do you agree, Jin-oh?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So Slack as a communication tool, just to be able to make sure, so you've got that flexibility of being able to set up the different channels for the different purposes, but also, as Chanel was saying, about some kind of central storage, whether that be Dropbox, OneDrive, it could be whatever, but at least you know that there is a central repository there, not just for your own well-being, that it is being backed up somewhere else, which is one. Data protection is really important, but making sure long term you've still got access to that information, so you can then pass it on to the next person.
Yeah, because a lot of small events, you do have a turnover in people who are running it, so it's always helpful. Christina Halls asked why you chose to use Airtable over Google Sheets. So what features made it important enough to use that application instead of just using Google Sheets?
I think it's just the extra things that you can do on top of it. So I love a spreadsheet. I love it Excel. I love a Google Sheet. I love all of them. But with Airtable, it does give you more flexibility in how you arrange views on certain things, and it gives you kind of like that nice card view in that Kanban style, which is kind of a lot bigger and clearer to see tasks than if they were just in a kind of like a spreadsheet list. So again, the data's all there. Like you can certainly start with a spreadsheet and see how that works for you. But Airtable just kind of takes it to the next level, and gives you extra views on your data. So like an org chart, if you are a bigger organization, you might want to see who reports to who and what roles and who's in that role. And it certainly helped us with Pint of Science when we outlined the roles that we had as we were onboarding and recruiting volunteers, to visualize how that was building itself out. But yeah, certainly for us, it's been kind of an evolution of starting somewhere and then seeing an opportunity for improvement and jumping on a new product that gives us something else.
Yeah, no, it's a great application. I've got a couple of questions that are probably Jin-oh's territory, so I'm going to roll them into one. Just asking, in setting up that G Suite and the Google domain, is it difficult to set up, and do you need any specific IT skills in order to kind of set up all those integrations and for the gist of it? Obviously, is it difficult to just set all that up in the first instance to get it running?
I guess there is within it, there is some setup at the start. If you've got someone who's got an IT background, it's going to be a lot easier to set that up. But I think the initial hurdles, if you are starting a new organization, might be trying to connect your domain to the system, things like that. So there is a bit of setup at the start, but they do have a lot of knowledge base and help articles, so it is fairly straightforward. But I guess with anything, if you're not dealing with something on an everyday basis, it may not be as familiar. But before I've left my contact details, if anyone does have any questions or doesn't need some assistance, feel free to reach out and I can offer you a hand or at least point you in the right direction.
Yeah, Jin-oh's a great help when it comes to ICT issues. Is the domain, does it cost something to set that up with G Suite, or does that also fall under the not-for-profit listing?
Yeah, so what you'd have to do is just register a domain name. So in our case, it's pintofscience.com.au. I think most places it's like $20 a year, so it's really low cost. It's not sort of a high investment for that sort of, but it does make your organisation then look, or in your event, look more professional rather than just being sent from a Hotmail account, if you're real.
So we've had another question from Jenny, and it probably leads into another question we've had as well. But she said she's had difficulty getting people on board to use things like Airtable or Notion or Trello. So how do we convince people that they're the things that you want to use?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's something that doesn't just exist at this level, that exists in, you know, large corporate organizations when they do any IT change. So, I mean, if I had an answer to that, I would be a very wealthy person. There's no silver bullet. I think it's just, you know, understanding people. So people hate change as a rule, and people want to do things the easiest and most familiar way that they can. And that's totally fine. It's just kind of getting them on that journey to see the benefits. And I think once people see the benefits of something, they will use it. So we have a whole world full of people who self-educated to use Facebook because they wanted to. And I think as long as we can get people on board to want to use something else, they will do that same journey as they had with, you know, Facebook or whatever other social media platforms people engage with. I mean, like Instagram changes their functionality and layout all the time and don't give help guides, and people still do it. So I think it's just a matter of having a chat with your people, talking about the pain points, like going through what issues you're facing that is driving you to use different platforms, the benefits of those platforms, and then kind of coming to an agreement together on how you're going to be using certain things. And then as your volunteer group or organization progresses and gets older, that will just start being the way that things are done. And it won't be a question anymore. That will just be where things are.
Yeah, so eventually people get on board. I love the comparison with Facebook. We did all just learn it, didn't we? We didn't have a how-to guide. So which platform, we've got a lot of platforms that you use, which one do you find people interacting the most with? I think I know which one it is.
Well, Jin-oh has the stats. So.
I guess one of the huge thing for us is Slack. So Slack for us is it's a big part of the organisation, because the email is a very formal communication, and if all you want is a quick answer, it's a quick Slack message, most people will see the ping and go, yeah, okay, I can answer that now, or at least I can respond and say I can get back to you in the next half hour or so. So the whole so Slack is the most popular because you can also control your interaction with Slack as well. As Shadell was saying, that you can control your do not disturb hours, but because it is a very casual tool, it allows our volunteers to have discussion with every other volunteer in the organisation, whether it be the direct manager or the CEOs or the executive staff, etc. So Slack is that enabler that does allow you to communicate more freely.
Yeah, everyone loves a good messaging app and a good emoji. Yep. I know we're all fans of emojis. Pint of Science. So I guess where did you end up with so many platforms across the organisation? You talked about the growing and evolving. So when do you make the choice to use a new platform for something else? What forces that change?
So from my perspective, I think it's, I guess with Trello, it was a financial decision where they changed their pricing model. So as Fiona said earlier, that's kind of why we made that decision. But with Airtable and Notion, it was just being aware that there was something better out there that we could be using to give us more functionality. So we still very much exist in Slack and G Suite, like that's kind of our core platforms. And we've been there for many years. And then the other things like Airtable and Notion are kind of new products that we're dabbling in to see what benefits they can give us.
I've got one question, and with my experience with Pint of Science, you probably will have it. Someone asked, do you have any recommendations for graphic design? Now, I know we had some simple graphics that we did with Pint of Science this year, being an online festival. Is that something that was connected to the G Suite, or is it? And why did we choose to implement it, I guess?
I can answer that one if Jin-oh doesn't want to jump in. So the slides that we're using today, they were obviously designed by a graphic design team. The little people on the bikes with the wings, little bee people, they were kind of elements that were given to us by graphic designers in very small pieces. And then we've built templates in G Suite based off different pieces of graphic design assets. So if you do have any branding that you have, then it's just kind of formatting them in a nice way and then using that as a template moving forward. So when I create a new slideshow, that just gives me this as a template to start from. On a personal front, in other roles that I'm involved with, I love Canva. So Canva has different options as well for like free and different pricing options. And you can set up branding colors in there, and it kind of gives you that holistic brand feel based on your colors and your styles. And yeah, you can size them for social media and different other kind of like invitations or banners or whatever you need to do if you don't have a graphic design team.
Yeah, not many of us would have it. So I've been really pleased to look at the back end behind Pint of Science today, and I'm really glad you guys were able to join us today. My kind of last question is probably just an out of the blue and maybe a little bit on a selfish side for me, but you know, you guys are volunteers with Pint of Science, and obviously this is a lot of work in terms of managing all these tools and collaboration. And just a quick why you do it, why you choose to kind of volunteer in this sort of space with the not-for-profits and science.
Yeah, okay, I'll start. For me, science communication has always been a passion to bring science to the general public. With so much misinformation nowadays out there, whether it be, I guess I'll use a topical example would be anti-vaxxers vaccination would be a topical subject. So for me, it's just been, I have a love for science, and one way for me to help out was I can bring my IT skills into Pint of Science, because I've been involved in IT for over 20 years. I've also been involved in various science organisations, but I guess for me is what's one way that I can help the cause and participate, even though there might be some long hours involved. What drives me is that end goal is to be able to help.
Well, for me, so I attended Pint of Science in 2018, and then I've been volunteering since then. And for me, I just love that those kind of events exist to bridge that gap between the research that's happening and the everyday kind of people that may not be aware. And I work in IT as well, so you've finally got two IT people. But I find that when you kind of are at networking events and people say, oh, what do you do when you say IT? And they don't understand what that means or what your job looks like. And they kind of just zone out and don't really want to talk to you much longer. And I think for some people, science and research can be that same kind of like, oh, I don't understand. What questions do I even ask? This is a really hard conversation to have with somebody. So I think this is really important to bridge that gap, to kind of make it a fun conversation in those scenarios.
It definitely does that. Well, thank you again for joining us today, and thank you to all of our attendees and our questioners. It's been a really great time to get together. I just wanted to remind you quickly that this series is part of an ongoing partnership between Inspiring the ACT and ASC Canberra. And our next event will be on evaluation. So make sure you like the ASC Facebook page or IAASCT, and you'll get notified of the next event, which is due in mid-July. So thank you again.